Many wondrous monuments and fortifications, such as Minas Tirith, Isengard, and the Hornburg, were a great testament to the glory and legacy of Gondor's might, and one of the most renowned of these monuments was the Argonath, for it captured the majesty of the kings of Gondor, and it served as a warning to their enemies. Hey guys, it's Carl here, and in today's episode, we'll be exploring the history and purpose of the Argonath of Gondor. So the Argonath ties in with the story of Minalcar, who was the 19th king of Gondor, for during his reign, the Easterlings invaded the northern lands of Gondor, and these attacks became more common and daring as they increased in strength, and they could very soon become a dire threat. And so Minalcar rallied his armies, and in the year 1248 of the Third Age, he led a great force out of Gondor to challenge the Easterlings, and they fought a terrible battle between the lands of Rhovanion and the Sea of Rhûn. The Easterlings stood no chance against Gondor's might, and they were utterly defeated. And even though Minalcar was victorious, it soon became clear to him that he must make some new plans to defend Gondor's northern borders. There were two pressing issues at hand. Firstly, even though the Easterlings were defeated, they would eventually recover and threaten Gondor once more. And so Minalcar fortified Gondor's northern borders and the western shores of the river Anduin. And secondly, Gondor's wars with the Easterlings allowed the people and the lands of Rhovanion to recover, since they had often been raided by the Easterlings, and their lands flourished in this newfound peace, and the men that lived in Mirkwood and around the Upper Anduin increased in numbers. These men were allies of Gondor, and they were growing restless, and so Minalcar decided to give them more land by withdrawing Gondor's borders to the Emun Muil, and he marked it with two mighty statues, the Argonath. This monument was built at the entrance of the lake called Nen Hai Toil, and the statues were in the shape of Isildur and his brother called Anarion. No stranger was allowed to travel past them, for they would be intruding upon the lands of Gondor, and this monument was known by many names, such as the Argonath, the Kingstones, the Gates of Gondor, and the Pillars of the Kings. Their stern expression faced the northern lands to intimidate their enemies, and their left arm was held out with its palm open as a sign of warning. A great and majestic power resonated within these statues, and they wore crowns upon their head, and they held an axe in their right hand. Now these statues were built in the middle of the river, and there was a gap between them, and if someone had to travel through it, they would reach the lake of Nen Hai Toil. 3 peaks could be found towards the southern end of this lake, and the middle peak rose up from the water, and it was called Tol Brandir, while the western and eastern peaks were called Amon Hen and Amon Lau respectively, and they were part of the hills of the Emun Muil. Both of these hills used to serve a purpose to Gondor, for in the days of its glory, they were used to keep watch over the surrounding lands, though as Gondor's power and influence declined, these areas were eventually abandoned. Now even after 1,700 years had passed, these statues were still standing tall and resolute, and the pride and majesty of Isildur and Anarion was not diminished, even though they had been exposed to the sun and rain for so many years. When the fellowship passed between these two statues, their ominous atmosphere scared Frodo and left him in awe, and he was too afraid to look up. Even Boromir bowed his head in their presence, and it's impressive that these statues had such a tremendous effect, even though the Fellowship weren't enemies of Gondor. Yet this monument seemed to energize Aragorn, for as they passed close to it, his eyes lit up, and he stood proud and tall, no longer a weather-torn ranger, but a king that was returning from exile to his land. It's interesting that Aragorn had never passed through or seen the Argonath before, and so I can imagine that it must have been quite an emotional experience to see his ancestors towering above him. We're never told what happened to these statues or how long they lasted, though I would hope and imagine that they were looked after, and that the surrounding hills of Amon Hen and Amon Lau were manned once more after Aragorn's coronation. Now you might ask, how come Isildur and Anarion were represented in these statues, instead of Isildur and Elendil, who was much more famous than his son? And the answer is that even though Elendil was the High King of Arnor and Gondor, he actually ruled the northern kingdom of Arnor, while his sons Isildur and Anarion were in charge of Gondor. Their thrones were side by side in the great halls of Osgiliath, and they ruled together. And so I think that it makes much more sense that their likeness was chosen for this monument, rather than that of their father. Anyway friends, this wraps up today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. What do you think happened to these statues? And was it one of your favorite monuments of Arda? In my case, I think it's one of the monuments that had a profound effect on me, for it was the first time that we could see the glory of Gondor that Boromir spoke of, and truly appreciate how majestic this kingdom of men had once been. I also believe that the movies did an exceptional job at portraying it, and it was one of the most powerful scenes of the trilogy. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons who have really helped to elevate this channel. It wouldn't be the same without you. And I would like to express how grateful I am for your support, especially our Wizard-Tier Patrons, T-Gorman, Mike Feeney, Roland Myrvold, and Jacob Williams. If you too would like to help support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon page in the video description below. I'll also be leaving links to our Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and Twitter communities, so follow us if you'd like to have some extra Lord of the Rings content in your day-to-day lives. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.